The idea of elements of architecture, it is important to understand that there's other aspects that as architects you will work alongside other fields or other components that will also make up the building. So in this case, we're talking about mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, and structural, right? The MEP and structural engineers. So are the building systems and why are they important to architecture? So imagine or think that you are designing a church and they really want this to be a place that feels um, without anything, very open. It almost feels like the void. And so look at this image. What do you think? Do you think they did a good job by doing that? There's, very few windows. This light that comes in the shape of the cross, very minimal. All the materials are very concrete, makes it feel like maybe, you know, uh, more an experience of more seriousness. So, but what if they tell you to add some sort of air conditioning to this? What if they tell you that you need to add some structure to this? So think of what do you think of this image now? Like now that you add here's for the air, right, to come out. But then they also wanted to add this fan, so the fan could add some air in order to move the air around. Do you think it's the same effect as this first image? Maybe not, right? Because now there's a couple of elements that are maybe distracting or taking away from this clear view of this sort of solemn light that comes from the cross, right? So why are they important? Because as an architect or designer, you really need to account for all these elements when you're designing. These are elements that, like I said, you work with someone that's sort of leading this, but you also have to be aware of these elements to be able to guide them in a sense that leads to a good design. So the different areas that you will be working with is in this case level ground, working with civil engineering and all, and similar to work with the foundation. You work with the structural engineer and also doing the structure of the building. So thinking back to that first video that I mentioned about the foundation, the structure. Now we're getting a little bit deeper, understanding that there is a specific group of people that would focus on those areas, right? This is where the architect designer comes in when it comes with the walls and the sort of but when it comes to the infrastructure, which is mechanical, which is the MEP, right, just for short, we can see that we need to call a mechanical engineer, an electrical engineer, and again the mechanical engineer. And then when it comes to all the finishes, right, we can do the architect or even an interior designer can come in and work on this. So the question is the architect really responsible for all these type of systems? So the answer is technically no. You will always work with a civil structure MEP consultants, and they are responsible for their trades. That is what they are specialists in. That's what they studied. They're working in that field, and so they know their stuff, right? But as an architect and as a designer, we're responsible so that the original design intent is not lost. And that's very important, right? Because at the end of the day, there is a design idea, there is a design goal. You already talked to your client and you know what you want to do. And so all these other elements or components, they're meant to make your building stronger, and not only stronger, but to really make your building work, right? We need air conditioning, we need plumbing, we need restrooms, we need a structural foundation of the building. All of these things are extremely important, and if done well, should blend in with the original design. Right? Obviously, there's always going to be moments where things have to change when it comes to the design, and in order for all these other things to be able to be done well, it's always like mentioned in other lectures, the safety of the user, it's going to be always more important than the design intent, than the aesthetics, anything like that. So if structurally and foundation wise it needs, things need to be changed for the safety of the user, that's always going to be more important than the aesthetic. But at the end of the day, there's ways of being able to work to be able to reach that safety and the original design. And so knowing those components beforehand and having consultants or working along with these different engineers, and working well with them is going to make your design project a lot better. So you sort of have to plan for these building systems, and you also have to inform the consultants of what they, what are you really trying to do, so that they can work well with you. So, like I mentioned, these are the types of systems that the components. So the structural, we're not going to get that far into it, but again, has to do with the foundation, the columns. We talked about post and lintel earlier, beams, which is this horizontal elements, right? So we see how a beam, and then we have the column on the side, right? And so the joists also, going as in a horizontal plane. So there's a lot of different components that come in, and so as a designer or a structural engineer can really work well to make this happen. Foundation is where it all begins, right? So understanding exactly what type of footing, exactly what type of soil you're working with, all of these different things is what's really going to make this is the first stages in the design or for the building to come in. Combining with continuing with this idea of columns, right? The idea of beams and joists, girders, to provide these spans, these openings, to provide the structural elements so that the roof and all that can be placed eventually. The mechanical has to do more with the air conditioning and the heating of a room. And again, there's a lot of different components, right? So where is the unit that's supplying the air? How is the air? What are the vents to return the air, and how are the air being distributed into the different vents, into the different spaces? Is this visible or hidden? Is this in the roof? Are these in the wall? So there's all these different things that needs to be, observed, and this is where a clear communication can come in, right? I would like my unit to be in the roof. I would like the unit to be in the attic. I would like to be outside, right? But if it's going to be outside, it needs to be in this because I don't want it to be visible as people are driving, right? And I don't want any of the ductwork to be seen. And so everything has to be above the ceiling and so on, right? So these are the communications and the conversations that you're having in order to make it happen. Another thing, it has to do with electrical. So as the designer or the architect, you do come up with what type of fixtures you're going to be using, right? What type of, let's say, light bulb you're going to be using, what type of chandelier, and so on, or what type of this outlets. But an electrical engineer will have to know where everything is placed to be able to run all those wires, to be able to know how many boxes to put, and so on, right? It needs to be able to create its own plan so that everything is well done, right? So it's not just about, oh, I want these pretty lights and I want to charge my phone here. There's also another component of for the engineer works with you to make it happen. Plumbing is very similar, right? To hopefully you've noticed that all of these are essential to the building, and so bringing water, right, and taking out water, putting putting it back into the sewer. So all these whole system is, and again, this goes back to the same idea of I want restrooms here, I want plumbing here, I want things to be seen, I want things not to be seen, and so on. And all of that becomes part of the different elements. So that was the last one in this case. Hopefully it makes sense to you. And so in a very summarized way, understanding that all these different types of systems, they're still components, they're still buildings, systems that are seen in elevations, are seen in sections, they're seen in floor plans, so they're part of the building itself. Even though you might not have all the knowledge if you are in the architect design field into these things, but having a certain knowledge and an early on communication will make your design intents a lot stronger. So similar to the other video, I'm going to ask you to look around your building and look at these different systems in your house. What type? Where's the AC unit? What type of plumbing do you know what the plumbing is? How did they do that? Do you understand a little bit of the electrical? Where's circuits? All of those, right? So try to look into your room and your space to be able to understand this type of building systems in your own area. Thank you for watching.